So I don't usually talk about world events or politics on this channel, mainly because it doesn't really concern me, but I am a person of the world and I'm affected by the things in the world. And I think there's a deep dharmic spiritual awakening lesson that can be explored with regards to Donald Trump and his behaviour. And it's not new behaviour. We've seen this kind of movement, this lurch to the right and this fascistic control over others. We've seen it before. And for me, it always feels like an inevitable consequence of self-centered delusion. So if we take the kind of the dharmic view, the Buddhist view, that we suffer because of our craving, and that craving is self-centered. So actually liberation, freedom from that suffering, is letting go of that self-centered craving. So if we take that view and then we look at someone like Donald Trump, he kind of like, he's going in the opposite way of liberation. He's kind of plunging into the world of samsara again and again and again, desperate for some relief really from the dissatisfaction that he feels. Now, he's not the only one. So many of us feel that dissatisfaction with things, dissatisfaction with conditioned existence. This is why spiritual awakening and the Buddha's teachings are so vital, is because it's talking about a common human truth. But what happens when you take an almost pathological clinging to self-centered view, combine that with a deep fear of your own humanity, put it in an aging body with someone who has never had anything other than people agreeing with him and infinite access to money. What happens if you put all of that together and then make them in charge of things like the army, federal reserves, the power of the wealthiest nation on the planet? What happens then? Well, then we see what we're seeing. We see this self-centered delusion writ large, magnified times 1,000, desperately scrambling to try and find relief. It's like, if I believe that my relief is in the things of the world, which the Dharma says that's not true, that is the cause of suffering. But if I believe that, and then I get given all of the things and access to all of the things, and they still don't satisfy, then what happens? Then we try more. We try more and more. We try to exert more control over actually a world or a moment, an experience, an existence that is ultimately out of our control, because all the time life is slipping away. All of the conditions are impermanent. This life, this world that we take as a human being is falling apart from the moment that we're born. And with that comes a lot of fear, especially if you're trying to find something really reliable and permanent in the world of things. And yet, in the case of Donald Trump, it's like a magnified, intensified view of what happens when greed, hatred, and delusion are just given free rein to just cycle and cycle and cycle, spiral up into, well, what we see is into things like fascism, into things like despotic control, where an individual is given more power than really any individual should have. They are deeply afraid. They're rooted in self-centered delusion and their own insecurities and fear. And these are insecurities and fears that we all share, actually. He's not too different from us in that we all fear the insecurity of life. We've all been stung by the unsatisfactoriness of getting things, like seeking and craving something desperately, thinking it's going to fix us, and then finding that it doesn't, it can't, because it's impermanent. That's its nature. It just doesn't really work like that. But yeah, so Donald Trump is kind of like that momentum just unfettered. And then obviously the stakes go up. If you're deeply, deeply afraid, almost narcissistic in relation to your self-view, and you've had everybody tell you that you are important, you're powerful, and you're given all the power in the world, then it's natural that somebody will try and exert that power to try and get a sense of safety, a sense of control. But I guess what he will definitely find out, like we all find out, that doesn't work, because death comes to all of us, ill health comes to all of us. This impermanent unfolding reality is that way. It is that way. We get to taste that impermanence all of the time. But with each taste of that, for someone like Donald Trump, someone who's like almost maniacally invested in samsara, with each taste of disappointment comes maybe the reflex or the reaction that, no, I've just not got the right thing. I need more control. I need to, and that control, as we're seeing, is coming at the expense of others. This is why the Buddha talked about suffering and the end of suffering. Because that self-centered view, which is fueled by the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion, it propels suffering in the world, both here and outwards. We propel our own suffering and we propagate suffering in others. And we're seeing that in real time, like spread across our TV in hypercolor, like fiber optic speeds. It's really quite bizarre as a Dharma practitioner to see the asuras. So I don't get talk about too much. Is it the asuras? I think it's the asuras, which is basically one of the 6 realms of conditioned existence, six realms of samsara talked about on the Tibetan Wheel of Life, which is the realm of warring gods, essentially, like warring titans. So people that become so fixated and so deluded in getting gratification from the things of the world. They've got a lot, but they need it to feel safe. And then you've got these titans go to war with each other. You know, it's a very beautiful allegory which is portrayed in the Tibetan Wheel of Life. It's just such a beautiful image. But so this is spoken about in Dharmic text quite a bit, you know, like this warring, grasping, hyper-fueled way of being in the world, which is, propagates mass suffering. And we're seeing it happen right now. So why am I talking about this? Well, because if we see this for what it is, which is the same, we might not want to admit it, but it is the very same delusions that we all suffer with. It might be magnified times 1,000, but he's not so different from us, actually. You know, the grasping for control of a company is that much different in its nature from grasping for that important job promotion, that important position in your finance firm. Are they that different? They're still rooted in a fundamental delusion that that thing is going to make me permanently happy. And every time we get to see that it doesn't. And we may gloss over it all away, but we eventually get to see that it didn't. It just doesn't work like that. Everything that we grab, it slips through our fingers. So if we see this writ large in the world like this, we can use it as a way to look at our own experience. We can see the suffering in Donald Trump as he communicates. We can then see the suffering in that he propels into the world with the effects that he's having on people in Minnesota, people in Europe, people in Mexico. Like the list goes on, and it seems to be getting bigger. But we can see the nature of that self-centered delusion propelled by greed and hatred being pushed into the world. We can see the effect that it has. And we can see that actually we have a choice. What do we do in this situation? Do we meet fire with fire and say, oh, look at all that suffering and hatred in the world, I'm going to hate it back? Or can we look at our own actions, look at the ways in which we're still deluded, we're still attached to this self-centered way of becoming in the world? And can we take the invitation to wake up? Wake up from this dream of greed, hatred and delusion, of chasing things that will never truly satisfy? Can we bring ourselves into this moment and open our heart, letting go of the grasping and the clinging to things? And can we then be motivated by actions of open-handed generosity and compassion in the world? Now, to the self, to the fixed self, the one that's been conditioned as an individual, that might sound like, well, no, why should I? I'm at risk. I'm at threat. If I do that, I'm giving up my power. Why would I give something in the world when the world is such a hostile place? And that is the language of delusion. That is the core delusion, that we are separate from each other, that we are at war with each other. That was never the case. It never will be the case. We are not separate in our nature. We are in this together. So when we see kind of an egomaniacal, fascistic leader rise to power, driven by greed, hatred and delusion, we can see that as a warning call in our own lives and say, actually, look at the effect that has on them and others. What can we do about it here? If I can see that actually unchecked, this grasping, clinging, pushing away, like hateful, spiteful motion in the world, that's what it leads to. What can I do about it when I sense it arising here? So it felt like it was important to share that, because it's very, well, in my life, it's been very rare that you've seen like such a quick and very publicized example of this spiraling up of these delusive, self-centered habits in the world so publicly, and seeing the effects of them, unmitigated suffering. We can see the suffering that's happening in the world because of this type of action. So if we see that, the question is, well, how am I going to live my life? Am I going to continue to grasp at the things that drive the very suffering that Donald Trump experiences and is propagating? Or am I going to let go of that and turn towards the Dharma, turn towards truth and awaken?